We are jumping back into Dune Awakening today because I wanted to do a little bit of theory crafting, if you will, inside of this whole class building system that they have set up. I'll have links to this down in the description if you guys want to go check it out for yourselves. But today I wanted to jump in and build out my ideal build. And what we're going for here is really a solo friendly build. I'm looking for a type of one size fits all build, a class that can really manage to take down anything by themselves. This is probably going to be a bit of an extended video here. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and jump right on into this thing with exactly what I know for sure that I want to put into my build. And then after that, we'll kind of work around with the other classes in regards to how exactly we want this whole thing to feel. Overall, we're looking to put together some sort of sniper slash assault rifle slash dagger build for Dune Awakening. So keep that in mind as I go through this here. But let's go ahead and start off with the trooper and talk about probably this skill that I need on my toolkit the most. I'm anticipating having this slotted on my abilities constantly here, and that of course is the Shigawire Claw. This is essentially a grappling hook inside of Dune Awakening. This allows you to traverse the terrain while you're on foot faster than any other ability. I'm almost positive. We'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the Bene Gesserit, but the Shigawire Claw is most definitely something that I'm going to be slotting on my toolkit. And this is mainly also because we're going to be pairing suspensor belts with this, which just make this even more powerful. Like I said, we're going with a sniper build as well. So this grappling hook here is going to not only allow us to position, but it's also going to allow us to possibly get out of dodge should we be getting attacked by a group or something. Again, we're going for a bit of a solo build, one size fits all. We're going to be putting the Shigawire Claw on our ability list. You do also have the battle hardened technique on this skill tree here, which is going to allow you to use your abilities more often, which is potentially going to give you the upper hand when it comes to trying to escape some dangerous situations. However, you're only allowed to slot in 3 techniques, so I'm not 100% sold, and I'm not sure that I want to fill out this second slot quite yet. However, one technique that I for sure want to deploy is the suspensor dash. Like I said, we're going to be pairing this grappling hook with a suspensor belt that helps us fly around, and then if we can throw a mid-air dash into the situation with this suspensor dash technique, then we're definitely going to be doing so. So we're going to have to get this anti-gravity field, then unlock this and then slot this. But on top of that, you also have the suspensor efficiency passive right here, which is going to reduce the power drain or allow you to fly through the air for even longer. So we're definitely going to be putting 3 points fully into this. And then finally, most of our points in the trooper class are going to be going into the gunnery skill tree, where we're going to be filling out the ranged damage, which is going to give us a boost to all of our ranged weapons. But we also want to unlock fully field maintenance and gunsmith, which is going to not only increase the durability of our weapons or the amount of repairs that we can do on our weapons, but it's also going to reduce the amount of durability loss that our weapons take every time we fire a bullet. So even though we're not going to be using this center of mass technique, we are going to have to put 1 point into it so that we can unlock field maintenance on top of the gunsmith. You have the energy capsule ability here, where you pop an energy capsule, which is going to make it to where you become detached, they say, allowing for better targeting as well as better or more ranged damage, I'm assuming. Since we're primarily going to be sniping, I'm tempted to put this skill in there, but again, this is going to be one that we come back to. So let's go ahead and move on to another class that I want to for sure be sure to slot some points into, and that is actually Planetologist. Like I said, this is going to be a solo build. We're looking for a one size fits all, and there's not a whole lot you can do with the Planetologist class when it comes to PvE or PvP. However, you do get access to this mechanic skill tree here, which gives you vehicle repair, which is going to reduce the max durability loss. Definitely something that you're going to want to have. During my time in the beta, I definitely, if you left your sand bike out, that thing was going to get ripped apart by the sand and you were going to have to repair it pretty quickly. So to have something like this slotted in is definitely something I want on a solo build. But you also have these abilities: vehicle mining, vehicle scanning, and sandcrawler yield, all of which I want to fully max out. So we're gonna have to put 12 points into this mechanic tree on the planetologist side of things if we're talking about fully completed end game build here. On top of that, though, during this very first June 5th launch, we're going to be attempting to run at this solo. So I'm actually going to want to boost my cutter ray and mining abilities and resource gathering abilities as well. So I'm for sure going to be dumping 3 points into cutter ray mining, which increases the yield that you can get. But we also have deep analysis on this skill tree here, which basically does the same thing and is going to increase our yield. So I need to get to that. And in doing so, I'm going to put 1 point into dew gathering. Now I may actually max this out so we can try to do a little bit of dew gathering as farming, but I feel like once we get into the steel and we get into the more automated or passive water collection techniques, we should be able to avoid this. So I'm just going to slot 1 point in there for now, but we're going to put 3 points into deep analysis. And then I'm looking at this overcharge ability here that allows you to increase the maximum power capacity of your power packs, which is kind of what our whole suspensor belt is going to be running off of. So this could actually be a massive, massive benefit for us and could very well be something that I slot 3 points into, but I'm not entirely sure yet. One thing I am sure of, though, is this conservation of energy technique, which is making it to where you can reduce the power drain of every action that you take. If we max this out all the way to level 3, this is going to nearly give us a 10% reduction in our power drain. So definitely going to want to get to this. Again, this is an end game build type thing. This will be something that I'm pushing towards the end of my build, obviously. However, when it comes to the planetologist, we're actually going to be slotting in 44 points, which is a bit much, and we may end up reworking that. But let's go ahead and move on into the Bene Gesserit here, where there's definitely a couple things that I want to slot in. First one being sun tolerance. I'm going to want to slot 3 points into this because managing the heat inside of Dune Awakening is a lot to handle. And if you're trying to run this solo, managing your water becomes a massive strain, especially considering that you need water to craft all sorts of things at your base. You need to be saving your water, not using it to drink. So I want to fill this sun tolerance up 3 points here, but we're also going to be slotting 3 points into self-healing, which is going to be boosting our healing effectiveness. You also have the vitality skill tree over here, which is something that you definitely are going to want to slot 3 points into because at level 3, it gives you a max health boost of 55, which is actually huge. And in order to get to this, we're going to have to do one of two things. Honestly, when we're working our way through the game, we're probably going to have to get trauma recovery and then vitality, just so we can unlock vitality sooner. However, in a perfect world, we would be skipping trauma recovery because this might actually be our third and final technique. I'm just not 100% sure yet. So I'd like to be spending the point that I have to spend on this, which is going to decrease the poise damage that we take, effectively reducing the stun buildup that happens on us, which would then allow us to dump 3 points into vitality. However, this brings us to probably the most important part of the Bene Gesserit, in my opinion, this being the Litany Against Fear ability that you can unlock. This is definitely going to be something that we're leveling up all the way to level 3, because this right here is going to be providing an armor multiplier. This starts out at a ×2 multiplier, and then at level 3, it gives you a 3x multiplier on your armor, which is actually wild and could possibly aid you in escaping from certain dangerous situations, especially out there playing solo. I do want to mention that I'm not 100% sure that this also applies the armor boost to you. The definition here reads that this is going to hearten any of your allies nearby, as well as providing you with the strength to push through almost any attacks, which to me kind of implies that you're going to be getting the shield buff as well, but I don't think it specifically says here. Regardless, if you're getting mobbed on by a group of people, or you know that a group of people is getting ready to hard push you, you could potentially pop this ability and then start to use your get out of dodge abilities in order to escape that attack. I've got a couple of more things that we'll get to later on which add to this escapability plan here. So let's go ahead and move on, because there are actually a couple of more abilities that I want to put points into here on the Bene Gesserit. The first being this blade damage one, which at level 3 is going to increase your blade damage to 15%. On top of that, though, I do want to dump points into short blade damage, because like I said at the beginning, we're looking to build a sniper assault rifle dagger class. So if we do get put into a situation where we have to put out some close range combat, hopefully we're not just at a complete disadvantage. So we're going to be putting 1 point into the Bindu sprint, and then 3 points into blade damage and 3 points into short blade damage. This just about wraps it up for the Bene Gesserit as far as I can see. So let's go ahead and move on into the Mentat, where we've got a couple interesting choices to make here. Since we're going to be sniping, we could potentially slot in this marksman technique, which is going to increase our headshot damage. However, it's going to reduce our body shot damage, which could really hinder us in our assault rifle gameplay. And I'm not entirely sure as a solo player if we're going to be able to sit in the back far enough of PvP and pop off a bunch of snipes, or if we're going to have to be pulling out the assault rifle more often than I would anticipate. So I'm not sure if I want to throw this technique down yet. However, if we are able to sit in the back and really just lay into people with the sniper, this would be definitely something that I slot in. But we do have the ranged damage passive, the Garment Keeper passive, and the tailoring passive all on this mental calculus side that I need to fill out here. So we're going to be putting 1 point into the Sentinel, filling out 3 points into range damage. And then with Garment Keeper and tailoring, this is kind of the same argument that I'm using with the vehicle durability on the Planetologist class, or the weapon durability on the Trooper class. Durability is kind of a pain in this game, and any and everything that kind of helps or reduces durability loss, I think, is going to be well worth investing in, especially as a solo player. We're not going to have the means to unlimited armor and weapons such as a big Zerg might, so we're going to definitely have to hold on to what we have for as long as we can. Something else we need on this mental calculus skill tree is the rifle damage, which is going to be boosting our sniper rifle damage, obviously. And in order to get to this, I'm either going to be unlocking a marksman in the main game, or if we're not going to go the marksman route because I'm using more assault rifle than I anticipated, I'll obviously just plop 1 down into pistol and then 3 into the assault rifle. I've got some points that I need to dump into the assassination side of things as well. First being headshot damage. Since we're going to be rocking the sniper and the assault rifle, I'm going to try and focus in on the headshot damage. So we're going to be putting 3 points into this for sure. But then you also have Assassin Shot, which is going to increase damage that you do to enemies that you shoot in the back. And I don't know how many situations are going to arise where I'm actually shooting an enemy in the back. Is this a damage bonus that's only going to apply one time because I only get 1 shot off before they turn around? At level 3, you're looking at 25% bonus damage, which might be worth it, especially compounding with the 20% here and X amount of damage bonus there, whatever, right? However, I'm just not sure if it's worth sinking the points into, especially considering we're kind of having to spread our points thin here, putting 44 points into Planetologist. I'm not sure if we're going to go with that. So for now, we're going to pass up on that. But as we're finalizing this build here, we may easily come back to this. Let's go ahead and move on into Tactician here, where you have the Iron Will technique. And this is one that a lot of people are putting on their for sure slot in list. And it makes sense because there's going to be a lot of people running the Bene Gesserit, and if they use their voice, they can do a lot of things to you. You know, they can make you stop, they can make you come to them, they can do all sorts of things. So being able to slot this in as a technique, that's going to give you the ability to kind of avoid being caught up by their voice is a decent thing. However, this does have a stamina cost, and I could actually see this being something that gets a bit abused, perhaps, to completely drain people's stamina. I'm just picturing a gang of 5 people rolling up on me, all using some sort of Bene Gesserit voice. I'm only running so much stamina, so eventually, if I'm avoiding the voices and they're still hitting me with the voices, really is just a matter of time before I'm completely drained. And at that point, I'm basically a floating duck. However, we'll put a pin in that. We may possibly come back to it, but let's jump into our final class here, the Sword Master. And this should be one that we don't have to put a whole lot into, because if we're using our blade, we are kind of in a last stand scenario, right? Our game plan here is to be able to use our grappling hook paired with our suspensor belt to move around the map with ease, to get positioning and lay out shots on people, which means that if we're actually engaging in extended melee combat, we've been caught essentially. So that's not to say that there's not some abilities and some passives and stuff that you want to put in here. So let's go ahead and start off with blade damage. This is definitely something you're going to want to boost, because if you're in that last stand mode, you don't want to be completely defenseless. So we're going to boost that all the way up, but we're actually going to be skipping the long blade damage, because like I said, we're going to be looking for speed and slight power with daggers. We're in a last stand scenario. We're probably going down anyways. We're going to try and be able to keep up the mobility and speed by having a dagger at our side. Another passive that I want to get to is Solid Stance, which is going to reduce our poise damage. It's going to make it to where they have to put more stun buildup on us before we end up being staggered. And getting staggered in this game is the worst. So we're definitely going to want to boost this up wherever we can. So in order to get to Solid Stance, we're going to put 1 point into bleed tolerance. I would max this out, but I'm not entirely sure how much of an effect bleed is going to have in the game. Inside of the beta, I didn't get hit with bleed very often, so let me know down in the comments if that's something you guys would max out, but we're definitely going to be putting 3 points into Solid Stance. Another passive that I want to get to is Field Medicine, which is going to make it to where you recover more health immediately when you use health kits. Anything that heals us faster or better is something that we're going to want to unlock. So we're going to be putting 3 points into that, and we've only got so many points left to work with. So we got to be a little bit picky here, because you have stuff like optimized hydration, which is great because you get a stamina bonus if you're fully hydrated, but you're not always fully hydrated in this game. Granted, when you get to the later stages of the game, you're better equipped to be fully hydrated, but the case still stands that dumping 3 points into this for something that's not necessarily going to be affecting you or helping you at all times is not something I'm completely sold on yet. However, we do have general conditioning, which is going to just increase your maximum stamina, which is definitely something that we want to get to. And in order to do so, we're actually going to be putting that point into Crippling Strike, which is an ability that is going to slow your enemies and make it to where it requires them to use more stamina to dash. I don't know if I'm going to slot this in quite yet. However, I do want to have it on my roster just in case it turns into something. I'm getting into more melee fights than I would want. Maybe I can hit him with a Crippling Strike and then grapple away. But this gets us up to general conditioning, where we're going to be dumping 3 points. Now that we have a baseline filled out here and I've got a general sense, or we've gotten to a pretty good spot here with my build, I want to go through and really finalize it. We have 19 points left to spend, as well as 1 ability slot and 1 technique slot still left to spend. So I'm going to work my way back through these. It'll get cut out in editing, but I'm going to work my way back through these. Something I was considering slotting in as an ability, but I'm not so sure of now, is Ignore. This is something that I thought would be some ability that I could pop, which would make me invisible. However, you can see that it technically does, but it only works on, from what I understand, a single target, or at least only targets that you have registered. And it says here that voice abilities require a short period for you to register your opponent before they can be used. This kind of makes it sound like A, the ability only works on one person, and B, you have to register that person before you can even use it, which kind of nullifies the point that I'm going for. However, maybe in like a situation where it's like, I've been fighting this guy, he's chasing me down. I've been fighting this group, they're chasing me down. I've got 1 guy left on me. Maybe I can have him registered and hit the Ignore ability here and technically go invisible and be able to make the escape. However, I'm just not completely sold on it, so I don't want to slot it in on this build. The last ability that we're going to be slotting in here is actually split between 2 different abilities. as we are building up our character, we are going to unlock explosive grenade and then ultimately assault seeker, which is the drone grenade. So as we're building our character up, we can have this on the back end. But once we're finally into the end game, once we're finally into the PvP side of things, we're going to be getting rid of assault seeker and we're instead going to be replacing it with energy capsule. This is an ability that is going to increase your targeting and your range damage. This has a duration of 10 seconds, but it gives you a bonus 50% range damage. So when we're in the back with our sniper, if we pop off this energy capsule, we may be able to lay in some of that extra damage during those PvP encounters. This last ability is actually something that we can play around with. So let me know down in the comments if you guys have any interesting abilities that you think would go really well with this build. But for now, we're going to be putting in the Assault Seeker paired with Energy Capsule. This just leaves us with one more technique to find and then 16 more points to spread across the build. And this is probably where, in all reality, I would slot something in like Iron Will, just to give us that bit of bonus protection from any Bene Gesserits. But I think we're actually going to err on the side of survivability again here and equip this stability technique. This is going to reduce the amount of poise damage that we receive. And when you're in melee, if you can prevent getting staggered, you're really going to put yourself at the advantage. So we're going to boost this up all the way to level 3 and then slot it in as our third and final technique, which technically only gives us 13 more points to work with in regards to, filling out this entire build here. But I'm going to leave these blank for now because I've gotten the point across with the whole build that I'm trying to put together here for Dune Awakening. I really feel like it does serve all purposes. It gives you a bit of the resource gathering buffs. It gives you the combat buffs, and it plays perfectly into exactly how I want to play this first run of Dune Awakening. If I end up joining a guild and rerunning Dune Awakening on June 10th, we may end up swapping out some of the planetologist things that we've unlocked to further buff our combat. But even as it sits right here, I think we're pretty dang solid. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you guys have any builds created already, I'll have a link to this specific build that I put together down in the comments where you guys can then put together your own builds. But that's all that I wanted to break down today. I hope you guys all have an amazing day. I'm out.